swarming all around us, bouncing off walls. What does it mean to be in tune? To sound just right. What does it mean to be finely tuned? To operate like a sophisticated machine, efficient, optimal, high performance. We are connected to the earth. We soak up its energy. And when we're outdoors with little influence from man-made pollution, when we are in nature, we are more in tune with Earth's own electromagnetic frequency, which interestingly is the same frequency at which our brain and body exist at their best. Sadly, that's not the reality we're used to today. Too much stress, poor diet, environmental toxins, and lack of sleep have become inescapable problems of modern life. To make matters worse, the recent exponential upsurge in technology usage is slowly grinding us down. According to Statista, worldwide smartphone subscriptions are predicted to hit 6.6 billion in 2022. By 2027, this number is expected to rise to 7.7 billion. This technological surge wears and tears your body, causing it to become out of tune. Our Wi-Fi routers, smart meters, and 5G wireless transmitters fill the air with microwave radiation. In fact, there's even radiation leaking from all the electrical wirings in your home. You're exposed to 1 quintillion times more radiation compared to 10 years ago. At this rate, many predict this number will soar over the next decade as modern technology takes greater hold, leaving you and your family even more exposed to the adverse effects of EMFs. Our eyes might not be able to detect these harmful electromagnetic fields, but they are here, swarming all around us, bouncing off walls, interacting with our skin and cells. What does that mean for your health? At the cellular levels, your body is electric. Cells in your body communicate using microscopic electric signaling. This is how your nervous system functions. Slight changes in the polarization of your cells can lead to significant chemical changes in your body. More studies are starting to confirm that electromagnetic fields can indeed cause a number of health problems, including electromagnetic hypersensitivity, EHS, a phenomenon characterized by the appearance of symptoms after exposure to electromagnetic fields. Such symptoms include heating of body tissues and cells, increased free radical production in your body, chronic fatigue, headaches, brain fog, and heightened anxiety. That's not all. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has recently classified radio electromagnetic fields as Category 2B potentially carcinogenic. With further scientific research being published every month on EMF's impact on our health, one of the best things you can do for your family is to limit EMF exposure whenever possible. How? Introducing Tune, new biohacking enhancement technology from Velavita. Your best bet against EMFs. Tune is a state-of-the-art wearable biohack designed to help protect your body from all that electro-smog swarming around you. Just place your Tune pendant around your neck, in your pocket, on your bedside table, or anywhere near you to reduce exposure from cellular signals, rogue EMFs, Wi-Fi radiation, and even fifth-generation wireless radiation. Designed to bring balance and harmony to your mind and body, Velavita's biohacking enhancement technology integrates the best of the latest scientific advancements and the fundamental principles of nature in a synergistic combination that, while subtle, can definitely be felt. Tune, along with Velavita's other amazing, innovative biohacking solutions, complement one another to help you stay finely tuned and perform at your best. So take it with you everywhere you go. Stay safe and keep living life, knowing you are protected from the dangers your eyes can't detect.
month for free. Click the link and answer a few questions and see if you qualify.
Having the face of a human. However, all have only one face each, unlike the traditional four-faced cherub. So, did John, the author of the Book of Revelation, describe this creature accurately? Or might he have seen the seraphim and the cherubim, but accidentally mixed them together when remembering his vision? But what's even weirder is that it seems John also threw a third angelic species into the mix, because he deliberately used the same disturbing description twice, that each creature was full of eyes. A terrifying profusion of eyes happens to be a main feature of the angels next on our list, the third choir and the lowest of the first sphere. Finally, we return to the unforgettable Ophanim, the literal wheels of God's chariot, and these make up the third choir. As described by Ezekiel, each of these angels are made up of two intersected wheels, both covered in eyes. He didn't clarify whether these eyes looked human, but it's usually interpreted that way. That doesn't make them any less alien though, and this particular feature is only one of the Ophanim's many oddities. To begin, a wheel within a wheel appearance conjures a strong feeling that this creature might not be from this dimension, and this theory is actually backed up by Ezekiel's observation that the Ophanim never seem to shift their position despite any change in direction. The prophet reported, quote, "As they moved, they would go in any one of the four directions the cherubim faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went." End quote. So, if we take a step back from the scripture and look at this from a more modern scientific lens, there's actually some sense to be made of this visual phenomenon. According to mathematical theory, if creatures from the fourth dimension or beyond exist, they'd be more than capable of navigating our dimension, just like how we in the third dimension can navigate a two-dimensional video game. But due to these creatures existing in a more geometrically complex space, our ability to actually see them is extremely limited. In most cases, a higher dimensional creature will simply be invisible to us, unless they make themselves visible at a very specific angle. And in the case that they do, their movement will be visually confusing or impossible for us to comprehend. The interdimensional theory definitely has some credence, especially with the traditional religious belief that angels are residents of the ethereal realm. That said, this mystery isn't the only one stemmed from the strange descriptions of the Ophanim's movement. In Ezekiel's account, he makes it clear that the Ophanim don't move on their own, but are set into motion and even steered by the cherubim. Quote, "When the living creatures, the cherubim, moved, the wheels beside them moved, and when the living creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose. The spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels." End quote. If the Ophanim require the cherubim to move, then we really have to wonder if the Ophanim are actually independent angelic creatures. The eyes definitely make them appear alive, but what if they're literally just wheels? This is worth thinking about because Ezekiel goes out of his way to identify the cherubim as living creatures, while describing the Ophanim as not much more than freaky-looking wheels that don't move on their own. On the other hand, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, 4Q405, does explicitly identify the Ophanim as angels, and the apocryphal Book of Enoch describes them as celestial beings who actively perform a function, guarding the throne of God. But since that's the same role as the cherubim, again, they seem to be directly tied to those beings. So this is yet another unsolved mystery. But returning back to biblical canon, Ezekiel's vision isn't the only description of the Ophanim. The Book of Daniel also contains a vision of God's throne, and states, quote, "His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire." End quote. Again, we see a clear association between angels and fire. In Ezekiel's vision, he only mentioned them sparkling like topaz, but It's possible this was just a poetic interpretation of the Ophanim's blazing flames. And that about covers the first sphere. But before we jump down to the second sphere, there are two mysterious beings mentioned in the Bible that you may have never heard of, or never considered might be unrecognized species of angels. And this is where we're getting really obscure, but as any theologian will tell you, the scripture is heavily embedded with hidden information and little secrets that require a very close look. And these two creatures might be examples of that. Definitely let me know whether you think these are angels in the comments below. The first of these is mentioned only once in the Bible, and specifically in the book of Genesis. After God banished Adam and Eve, quote, "At the east of the Garden of Eden, he placed the cherubim and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life," end quote. This verse seems to imply that, just like the cherubim, this flaming sword was assigned to guard the entrance to Eden. Traditionally, it was interpreted as a weapon given to the cherubim. However, there are reasons to believe this flaming sword may actually be a living entity, an angelic species unlike any we've encountered thus far. First off, this sword is apparently capable of movement, turning in every direction at its post. And the actual Hebrew term used to describe this sword, lahat cherub, literally translates to flame of the whirling sword, which not only emphasizes its movement, but doubles down on its fiery nature, implying that the object or creature itself is more flame than sword. And of course, the association with fire makes the angel theory all the more likely. Unfortunately, since this is the only mention of this strange flaming sword in biblical canon, we're left to wonder what this thing may have actually been. As for our second speculative angelic species, the second book of Kings describes the following, quote, "There appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven, and Elisha saw it, and he cried," end quote. This was the last time the prophet Elijah was seen on earth, making him one of the mere handful of humans believed to have entered heaven alive. This vision, though, of burning chariots and horses in the sky was seared into the mind of Elijah's protege, Elisha, who would inherit the role of God's chosen prophet. And apparently, Elisha inherited these chariots and horses too. While it's implied that only Elisha could see them, others being wholly unaware, make no mistake, these beings were apparently very real, and their presence would be vital to some of Elisha's greatest military victories. The following is one such event involving this haunting invisible army of his. Quote, "When the servant got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. 'Oh no, my lord, what shall we do?' the servant asked. 'Don't be afraid,' the prophet answered. 'Those who are with us are more than those who are with them.' And Elisha prayed, 'Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see.' Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha." End quote. Alright, the natural question to ask first is whether these horses and chariots are one angelic species, or perhaps two. Strangely, none of the verses that mention these creatures describe any riders or drivers in the chariots, so it wouldn't be a stretch to wonder whether these chariots themselves are alive, much like the wheels of God's throne, the Ophanim. This mystery doesn't end with Elisha though, because the book of Zechariah contains an instance where the prophet Zechariah met an angel riding on a red horse, and not long after he encountered 4 chariots, each powered by strangely colored horses, but no angels riding them. Quote, "There before me were 4 chariots coming out from between 2 mountains. The first chariot had red horses, the second black, the third white, and the fourth spotted, all of them powerful. I asked the angel who was speaking to me, "What are these, my lord?" The angel answered me, "These are the four spirits of heaven." End quote. So, if we interpret this passage literally, the angel is calling each of the four chariots and their respective horses a single being, counting exactly four spirits of heaven. And while